I was 28 years old when my mother locked me out of my own childhood home. Not figuratively, literally. I'm talking changed locks, new deadbolts, security cameras pointed at the driveway, the whole thing. And the text she sent, God, I can still see it glowing on my phone screen at 11 p.m. while I'm sitting in my car outside that house. Don't bother coming back. You're not welcome here anymore. My own mother, the woman who used to braid my hair before school, who taught me how to make her famous pecan pie, who cried at my nursing school graduation and told everyone I was her miracle baby. That woman just erased me. And here's the thing, this wasn't some heat of the moment fight. This wasn't me being a bad daughter or stealing from her or anything that would make sense. This was calculated, planned, cold, because 3 weeks earlier, I'd found something in her desk drawer that made my stomach drop to the floor. Something about my dad's death that she'd been hiding for 10 years. Something that involved her new husband, my golden boy brother, and a life insurance policy that was supposed to be mine. I know what you're thinking. Family drama, right? Happens to everyone. But what they did, what I found out they did, let me just say this. By the time I was done, my mother wasn't the only one who'd regret changing those locks. Subscribe now, because this gets so much worse before it gets better. Let me take you back to where it all started. Growing up in Austin, Texas, we weren't rich, but we were comfortable. You know, Dad, Victor, worked the oil rigs out in the Permian Basin. Gone 2 weeks, home for 1. That was the rhythm of our lives. He'd come back smelling like crude oil and exhaustion, but he always had this smile for me. Always. Mom ran a little bakery downtown. Nothing fancy, but people loved it. She'd win these blue ribbons at the state fair every year for her pies, and she'd display them in the shop window like they were Olympic medals. Then there was Tyler, my older brother. Golden boy doesn't even cover it. Football captain, prom king, the kid who could do no wrong. 3 years older than me, and somehow he just glided through life. Everything came easy to him. While I was burying myself in books and trying to figure out who I was, Tyler was out there being everybody's favorite person. I was 18 when everything changed. Dad got diagnosed with lung cancer. Lung cancer from all those years breathing in God knows what on the rigs. The doctors gave him 6 months. He made it to 5. I remember Mom at the funeral sobbing into her handkerchief, leaning on Tyler like she'd collapse without him. I stood there in my black dress feeling, I don't know, numb, empty. We all grieved differently, I guess. The life insurance payout wasn't huge, maybe $200,000 after everything was settled. But it was enough. Enough to keep the house. Enough to help me get through college. Enough to give us all a fresh start. I had a scholarship to UT Austin. Full ride. I was supposed to start that fall. But Mom needed help with the bakery. She was falling apart. She said, couldn't do it alone. Just for a year, Kayla, she promised, just until I get back on my feet. So I deferred, told the university I'd start next year. That year became 2 years. And somewhere in those 2 years, things started shifting. Mom stopped crying so much, started wearing makeup again, started going out on Wednesday nights. Book club, she said, but she never brought a book home. Then the rumors started. Neighbors whispering about her seeing someone, some guy from Houston, an investor type. Tyler knew something. I could tell by the way he'd changed the subject whenever I brought it up. Let Mom live her life. He'd say, Dad's been gone 2 years. She deserves to be happy. But I'd hear them sometimes late at night, talking in the kitchen when they thought I was asleep. And once, just once, I heard Tyler say something that made my blood run cold. You can't do this to Kayla. She's given up everything. Mom's response was quiet, too quiet. She'll understand. It's for the best. I should have confronted them right then, but I didn't. That was my first mistake. 6 months later, Mom announced she was getting remarried. To Garrett. Garrett from Houston. The investor. I met him exactly twice before the wedding. Tall guy, maybe mid-40s, with this smooth way of talking that made everything sound like a business proposition. Even when he was asking me how nursing school was going. Because, yeah, I'd finally enrolled part-time, commuting to San Antonio 3 days a week. It felt like he was calculating something. He'd walk around our house like he was appraising it, picking up Dad's old stuff, his coffee mug, his rig helmet that Mom kept on the mantel, and he'd just study them like they were artifacts in a museum. Your father worked hard, he said once, turning Dad's helmet over in his hands. Build a good life here. The way he said it made my skin crawl. But Mom was happy, or she seemed happy. She laughed more, smiled more, wore nice dresses instead of her flour-dusted apron all day. Tyler loved him. They'd talk real estate for hours. Garrett had his hands in property flips all over Dallas and Houston. Big money stuff. Tyler was trying to break into that world, and Garrett was his golden ticket. Me? I was the odd one out. The wedding was small. Some vineyard out in hill country. I wore a dress I borrowed from a friend because I couldn't afford a new one. All my money was going to tuition and gas. Tyler walked Mom down the aisle. She cried. Garrett smiled. I sat in the back and felt like a stranger at my own mother's wedding. They went to Napa Valley for the honeymoon. 2 weeks of wine tasting and luxury hotels. I stayed home and worked double shifts at the hospital where I was doing my clinical rotations. And that's when I found the papers. I wasn't snooping. Not really. Mom had asked me to grab her recipe box from her desk, something about needing it shipped to her in California because she'd promised a friend the pecan pie recipe. But when I opened the drawer, there was this folder, unmarked, sitting right on top. And I don't know why I opened it. Curiosity? Instinct? But I did. Inside were legal documents. A will, Dad's will, but it had been rewritten. New signatures. New dates. Dated 3 months after Dad died. The life insurance money, it wasn't split between me and Tyler like Dad had wanted. It was redirected into something called the Garrett Patricia Trust. And there was more. Plans for a family business with Garrett. Real estate investments. Property acquisitions. Tyler's name was all over it. Mine wasn't anywhere. Not one single mention. I sat there on Mom's bedroom floor, paper spread around me, and I couldn't breathe. They'd erased me. My own family had looked at Dad's death, at his life insurance, at everything he'd worked for, and they'd cut me out like I was nothing. I took pictures of everything with my phone. Every page. Every signature. Then I put it all back exactly how I'd found it. When Mom and Garrett came back from Napa, I didn't say a word. I smiled. I asked about the trip. I pretended everything was fine. But inside I was burning. Tyler came for Thanksgiving that year. Showed up in a new truck talking about some deal he'd closed in Dallas. I waited until we were alone in the backyard under those old string lights Dad had hung up when I was a kid. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. He knew exactly what I meant. I could see it in his face. Tell you what? About the will, Tyler. About the trust. About all of it. He went pale. Looked down at his boots. Mom said it was to protect you. Protect me? Garrett's investing in big stuff, Kayla. Real estate flips, commercial properties, there's liability involved. If your name's on it and something goes wrong, you could lose everything. This way, you're safe. And when the time's right, you'll get your share. Such a clean lie. He practiced it. You're lying to me. I'm not. Look me in the eye and tell me I'm getting my share. He couldn't do it. That's when I knew. I packed a bag that night. Didn't tell anyone. Just threw some clothes in my old duffel, grabbed my important documents, and left while they were all watching football in the living room. Drove to my friend Jessica's apartment in San Antonio and slept on her couch for 3 months. Mom called constantly. Voicemails piled up. Kayla, what's wrong? Why did you leave like that? You're being dramatic. Come home so we can talk. You're breaking my heart, baby. I don't understand what I did. She knew exactly what she did. Tyler tried too. Sent texts saying I was overreacting, that I was throwing away family over money. Easy for him to say when he got to keep his share. Garrett even reached out once, offered to pay my nursing school tuition. Full ride, no strings attached. I told him to go to hell. I finished nursing school on my own, took out loans, worked nights at a 24-hour diner, and weekends at the hospital. Slept 4 hours a night for 2 years straight. But I graduated, got my RN license, landed a job at a busy ER in Houston, and I cut them off. Completely. Holiday cards, maybe a phone call on Mom's birthday, if I was feeling generous. But that was it. I rebuilt my life without them. For 5 years, that's how it went. I moved into a tiny apartment near the medical center. Made new friends. Dated a guy for a while. Didn't work out, but whatever. I was fine. I was surviving. Then 2020 hit. COVID. The hospital became a war zone overnight. 16-hour shifts. Patients dying faster than we could count. I intubated people while wearing trash bags because we'd run out of proper PPE. I was terrified every single day. And Mom, Tyler, Garrett, they were thriving. Turns out Garrett had prepared for the pandemic. Stockpiled PPE months before anyone else. Sold it to hospitals at triple the price. And the real estate, all those properties people were getting evicted from because they couldn't pay rent during lockdowns, Garrett and Tyler bought them up, flipped them, made millions. I saw Tyler on the local news once, talking about his successful year in property acquisition. I wanted to throw my TV out the window. My apartment flooded during a Houston storm in August. Everything ruined. I had maybe $800 in savings after paying off student loans. I called Mom. First time in months. I need help, I said. Just a small loan. $1,000. I'll pay you back. Silence on the other end. Then, we're tight right now, sweetie. Garrett's got a lot of money tied up in investments. You understand. 2 days later, she posted photos on Facebook. Their new vacation home in Aspen, Colorado. Granite countertops. Mountain views. Hot tub on the deck. Caption, blessed beyond measure. Hashtag grateful heart. That's when something inside me snapped. Not like anger. Not like rage. Something colder than that. I stopped crying. Stopped feeling sorry for myself. And I started planning. If they wanted to pretend I didn't exist, fine. But they were going to regret it. I just needed to know the truth first. The real truth about what happened to Dad. Because something about his death never sat right with me. And I had a feeling, just a feeling, that if I pulled that thread hard enough, the whole thing would unravel. Subscribe if you want to see how far I took this. So I started digging. It started with Dad's medical records. I'd kept some of his stuff in a storage unit when I moved to Houston, boxes of old photos, his rig gear, paperwork Mom said she didn't have room for. Stuff I couldn't throw away, but didn't know what to do with. One Saturday, I drove out there, started going through everything. That's when I found his medical files from the oncology center. I'm a nurse, right? I can read charts. I know what elevated toxin levels look like. And Dad's levels were wrong. Not just high from rig exposure. I mean dangerously elevated. The kind of numbers you see in acute poisoning cases, not gradual occupational exposure. There was a note from his doctor, flagged for review, concerns about non-standard toxin markers potentially indicating contamination exposure. But no follow-up, no investigation. He died 3 weeks after that note was written. I sat in that storage unit for 2 hours just staring at those pages. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was seeing things that weren't there because I wanted to blame someone. But then I remembered something. Garrett had consulted for Dad's oil company years before they got married. Before Dad got sick, he had access to the rigs, to the equipment, to everything. I spent the next 2 weeks researching, used my hospital computer after shifts to look up toxicology reports, occupational poisoning cases, anything that might connect the dots. Then I did something crazy. I hired a private investigator, cleaned out my savings account, $3,000, every penny I had left after the flood damage. His name was Marcus, former cop turned PI, worked out of a dingy office in downtown Houston. I gave him everything: Dad's medical records, Garrett's employment history, the timeline of when Mom and Garrett met. I just need to know if I'm crazy. I told him. He called me 3 weeks later. You're not crazy. My hands were shaking when I met him at a coffee shop near the hospital. He slid a folder across the table. Garrett Webb has a history. Marcus said, insurance fraud in Oklahoma, 2008. Charges dropped due to lack of evidence, but the case file's still there. He was suspected of sabotaging equipment at a construction site to trigger an insurance payout. My stomach dropped. There's more. I pulled your mom's old emails, the account she had before she switched providers. She was communicating with Garrett 8 months before your dad's diagnosis. They were planning something. A fresh start, she called it. He showed me printouts, emails talking about being patient, about waiting for the right time, about how Victor's insurance policy would set them up for life. I felt sick, and your brother knew. Marcus continued. I found text exchanges between Tyler and Garrett. Tyler helped forge signatures on the updated will, got paid $50,000 to keep quiet and cover for them if questions came up. The coffee shop started spinning. Did they kill him? I whispered. Marcus leaned back. I can't prove murder, but the medical evidence suggests your father's toxin levels were artificially elevated. Someone with access to his work site could have introduced contaminants into his environment. With his pre-existing exposure, it would have accelerated the cancer, made it untreatable. He paused. Your mother also had access to his coffee thermos, his lunch, things he brought to the rig every day. I couldn't breathe. They killed him. My own mother poisoned my father for insurance money and a new life with Garrett. And Tyler, my brother, helped them cover it up. I sat there in that coffee shop, people talking and laughing around me like the world hadn't just exploded. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to the police. Not yet, because the police would need ironclad evidence. And what I had was circumstantial, suggestive, not enough for a conviction, but it was enough for something else. Revenge, the slow, methodical kind. I thanked Marcus, took the folder, drove home, and I started planning. First step, get close to them again. I sent Mom a text that night. I'm sorry for how I've acted. I miss you. Can we talk? She responded in 30 seconds. Oh, baby, yes. I've missed you so much. Come home. Please come home. Hook, line, and sinker. I moved back to Austin 2 weeks later. Told them I'd gotten a transfer to a hospital there, that I wanted to reconnect with family. They welcomed me with open arms. Garrett even helped me move my stuff into their guest room. It's good to have you back, Kayla, he said, that smooth smile on his face. I smiled back. It's good to be home. Liar, murderer, thief. But he had no idea what was coming. None of them did, because while I was playing the grateful, repentant daughter, I was gathering evidence, recording conversations, hacking into Garrett's email through a contact I'd made, a tech guy in Seattle who owed me a favor from nursing school. And what I found was beautiful. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Money laundering. Tyler's real estate deals were built on fraud, evicting low-income families during COVID moratoriums when it was illegal. Tax evasion. Bribery. A whole empire of corruption. I documented everything. Then I made copies, multiple copies, stored them in different locations, and I waited for the perfect moment. The perfect moment came on Thanksgiving. They wanted a big family dinner. Like old times, Mom said, sure, like old times. Back when Dad was alive, and they hadn't murdered him. I showed up with a pecan pie, Mom's recipe. She teared up when she saw it. You remembered, she said, hugging me. Of course I remembered. We all sat down. Turkey, stuffing, all the traditional stuff. Tyler flew in from Dallas with his girlfriend, some Instagram model type, who took photos of her plate before eating. Garrett carved the turkey, playing the patriarch role Dad should have had. And I sat there, smiling, waiting. Halfway through dinner, I excused myself, went to the bathroom, and I sent the emails, every single piece of evidence I'd gathered, sent to the IRS, the Texas Attorney General, the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, local journalists in Dallas and Austin. Everything. When I came back to the table, my phone was blowing up. So was Tyler's. So was Garrett's. What the hell? Tyler muttered, staring at his screen. Garrett's face went white. Something wrong? I asked innocently, taking a bite of turkey. Mom looked worried. What's going on? Tyler stood up. I need to make a call. He left the table. Garrett followed. I could hear them in the next room, voices rising. Panicked. Mom turned to me. Kayla, do you know what's happening? I looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who'd raised me, who'd braided my hair and taught me to bake, who'd cried at Dad's funeral while planning her new life with his murderer. Yeah, Mom, I know exactly what's happening. Her expression changed, just slightly, like she knew. What did you do? I told the truth. I set down my fork about the fraud, the money laundering, the illegal evictions during COVID, all of it. The room went silent. Tyler came back in, his face red. You did this. Me. I smiled. I'm just a nurse, Tyler. What would I know about offshore accounts? Garrett was right behind him, phone in hand. You've made a serious mistake, Kayla. Have I? Because I think the mistake was made 10 years ago when you poisoned my father. Mom gasped. Tyler froze. I don't know what you're talking about. Garrett said coldly. Yes, you do. I pulled out my own phone, started reading. Elevated toxin levels, non-standard markers, your consulting work at his rig, Mom's emails about fresh starts, and insurance payouts. I looked at Mom. You put it in his coffee, didn't you? Every morning before he left for the rig. Just a little bit. Enough to make the cancer worse. Enough to kill him faster. She was crying now. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. My voice was shaking, but I kept going. You wanted a new life. Garrett wanted the insurance money. Tyler wanted his cut. And Dad was just in the way. He was dying anyway. Mom shouted. The cancer was going to kill him. We just helped it along. I finished. That's still murder, Mom. The silence was deafening. Tyler's girlfriend awkwardly excused herself. Called an Uber. Garrett's phone kept ringing. Lawyers, probably. You've destroyed this family, Mom whispered. I stood up. No, you destroyed it. I'm just making sure everyone knows. I grabbed my coat. Oh, and one more thing. I'm suing for my inheritance. Dad's original will, the real one before you forged the update, named me as a beneficiary. I've already filed with the court. I walked to the door, turned back one last time. Happy Thanksgiving. The next few months were chaos. Federal investigations, IRS audits. Tyler's real estate empire collapsed. Garrett fled to Aspen, but they found him, arrested him at his vacation home. Mom tried calling, left dozens of voicemails begging me to make it stop, but I didn't answer. The trial was set for Travis County Court. Civil case for the inheritance. Criminal charges pending for Garrett and Mom. Tyler cut a deal, testified against them in exchange for reduced charges. Guess blood isn't thicker than water when you're facing federal prison. And me, I showed up to every court date, sat in the front row, watched them squirm. The judge ruled in my favor. The house, the life insurance remnants, everything Dad had wanted me to have. It was mine. Finally, I stood on the porch of my childhood home, keys in my hand, feeling empty. I'd won, but it didn't feel like I thought it would. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. We changed all the locks. You don't have a home anymore. I stared at the screen, confused. I literally had the keys the judge gave me an hour ago. I walked to the front door. New deadbolts, different locks than what the court had photographed. I tried my keys. They didn't work. What the hell? Next. I called my lawyer immediately. They can't do this, I said, pacing on the sidewalk. The judge ruled in my favor. The house is mine. Let me make some calls, she said. An hour later, she called back. Her voice was tight. Kayla, they filed an emergency appeal. And somehow, I don't know how, they got a stay on the property transfer. A stay? How is that even possible? The clerk who processed your case, she's being investigated. There's evidence she was bribed to delay the official transfer documents. Without that filing, technically, the house is still in your mother's name for another 72 hours. My blood went cold. Tyler, I said, he has friends in the county clerk's office. He's bragged about it. I'm filing an emergency motion, but it'll take a few days. In the meantime, they have legal possession. I hung up and stared at the house. Through the front window, I could see Mom and Garrett. They were watching me, smiling. Garrett raised his coffee mug in a mock toast. I wanted to scream. Everything I'd done, all the planning, the evidence gathering, the trial, and they'd outmaneuvered me with one dirty clerk and some cash. I slept in my car that night, parked down the street where I could see the house. And that's when I saw it. Around 2 a.m., a moving truck pulled up. I sat up, watching. They were loading furniture, Dad's old stuff, everything from inside. They were stripping the house. Even if I got it back in 3 days, there'd be nothing left. I took photos, sent them to my lawyer. But what could she do at 2 a.m.? By dawn, the truck was gone. I sat there feeling completely defeated. All that work, all that pain, and they were still winning. But then I remembered something Marcus had told me back when I first hired him. In my experience, people who are desperate make mistakes. And people who think they're winning, they get careless. I pulled out my laptop and started searching. Property records, transfer documents, the house deed. That's when I found it. The house wasn't in Mom's name. It was in Dad's estate. Still, after 10 years, because the fraudulent will had never been properly probated, the forgery made the whole thing invalid, which meant the house legally belonged to Dad's estate, and as his biological child, I had an automatic claim that superseded anything Mom had filed. Her emergency appeal, meaningless. The stay? Based on false premises. They'd been so busy playing games with clerks and bribes that they'd overlooked the most basic legal fact. I called my lawyer at 6 a.m., pulled Dad's death certificate and the original estate documents. File for emergency executor rights. The house was never legally theirs to begin with. She was quiet for a moment. Oh my God, you're right. By noon, we had an emergency hearing. By 3 p.m., the judge had ruled. The house was mine. Immediately. No appeals. No stays. And everything they'd moved out had to be returned within 24 hours or they'd face criminal theft charges. I drove back to the house with a sheriff's deputy, knocked on the door. Mom answered. Her face fell when she saw the deputy. Mrs. Webb, this property has been legally transferred to Kayla Morrison. You need to vacate immediately. But Tyler said, Ma'am, you have 1 hour to collect personal belongings. Everything else stays. I stepped inside my childhood home. Mom stood there, crying. Garrett was on the phone with his lawyer, yelling. And I walked past them both into the kitchen. Dad's old coffee mug was still there. The one Garrett had toasted me with through the window. I picked it up. You know what the funny thing is? I said, turning to face them. You were so focused on stealing from me that you forgot to actually secure what you stole. Mom just stared at me. Get out of my house, I said quietly. They left, both of them. And I stood there in the empty living room holding Dad's mug, finally understanding something. Revenge isn't about making them suffer. It's about taking back what they took from you. I still live in that house. Fixed it up, repainted, put Dad's rig helmet back on the mantle where it belongs. Mom and Garrett, they're facing trial. Criminal charges for fraud, conspiracy. Mom might actually go to prison for what she did to Dad. Tyler's cooperating with prosecutors, but his career is over. No one trusts him anymore. And me, I'm still nursing, still working those long shifts. But I come home to a place that's actually mine now. Sometimes people ask if it was worth it. All that pain, all that effort. And honestly, yeah, it was. Because they thought they could erase me. Thought I'd just disappear and let them win. But I didn't. And that's the thing about underestimating the quiet ones. We're usually the most dangerous. So if you're dealing with family who's betrayed you, who's stolen from you, who thinks you'll just roll over and take it? Don't. Fight back. Document everything. Be smarter than they are. Because in the end, the truth always comes out. You just have to be patient enough to wait for it. If this story hit different, subscribe. I've got more where this came from. Drop a comment if your family's ever done you dirty. Trust me, you're not alone. And for everyone who stuck around to the end, thank you. Sometimes the best revenge is just surviving and winning.